In this tutorial, I want to show you how we can build a web scraper in Node.js using the packages request and Cheerio. So we're going to get all of the different jobs that's on the San Francisco Bay Area inside of the IT sector. And we're going to see how you can get the job title, the date it was posted, the location, the description of the job, and maybe even the compensation of the job. And in the end, we're going to end up with this big JSON object array with all the data from the various jobs. I hope you will enjoy this tutorial. I'll see you in a bit while we start building the scraper. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to make a folder for our project. In this case, I will call it Craigslist. Then I'm going to go inside of the folder in the terminal. And then we will write npm init -- yes. So the -- yes is to accept the licensing agreement already, so we don't have to press enter or enter. And after we have run this, we can open the project inside of our code editor. So I'm going to go ahead, open the folder inside of Visual Studio Code. Now the folder or the project is opened inside of Visual Studio Code. Okay, so now we are going to add the packages we are using inside of a web scraper project, which is going to be request and request promise and Cheerio. And I will show you later what we use these different packages for. If you prefer to use npm instead of yarn, which I use here, you can use npm install -- save. So now once all of the packages have finished installing, we can create our index.js where we will be running our web scraper project inside. The left side is my editor, Visual Studio Code, which I use to edit the code. And on the right side, we have the browser where I navigate around in the page that I want to scrape. So this enables me to look around in the elements, select elements, find out how to select them, and then write the code on the other side. So first let's get the request module. Say require request promise. And this enables us to download pages, which we can then use Cheerio to select different elements, just like jQuery. Okay, so let's create our main function for the web scraper, which is going to be an async function. And if you're not familiar with async, it's a feature in the new JavaScript ES7, which enables us to use keywords such as await. And I will explain that later. Now we'll make the call for the function down here. So it enables us to use features such as await. So we can say await for every asynchronous call we make. So let me show you in practice how this works. We will get the HTML from the page first. So we say request.get, and this downloads basically any URL we paste into request. So we get the Craigslist page here with all the jobs. I will make a URL variable. I'm going to paste this URL down in the description as well. So if you want to get it, you look in the description or the resources for the Udemy lecture. And then we can use the await keyword to wait for a request to finish this request. And then we can do something with the HTML result. Like the old-fashioned way to do it would be using something like request.get URL and then do something with the result. And maybe have a catch clause here. But I think that using the await keyword in the new version of JavaScript is a lot cleaner than having the chain then clauses and so on. So that was just a short intro to await in case you're not used to that. Then I'm also going to paste in a try catch clause, so we catch any errors we have in the code, and we can paste it out to our console. So now let's try and just see in the console what request is actually getting from the Craigslist page, so you can see it in practice. We'll write console log HTML result, and then I will write node index.js, which has our web scraper. And then you can see inside of the console that it's actually just the basic HTML page you're getting in a string format. Now, we can't really do so much with this page as it is right now. That's what we need Chariot for. Okay, so now we have all the HTML of the Craigslist page inside of this string variable, but we also need to be able to select different elements and their values that we want. Of course, you could use regular expressions maybe, but it's a lot more easy and efficient to use something like jQuery, or in Node.js case, Chariot. So you can see we use the $sign to define the Chariot loaded page, which is going to enable us to select all the different elements using CSS selectors. So let's start out by selecting all the titles of the jobs. So let's open the Chrome Developer Tools. We use Ctrl-Shift-I to go into the tools. And you can also go inside of the menu inside Google Chrome, say More Tools, Developer Tools to access the Developer Tools. And then we can select all of the different elements with the icon up here, and we can click on them, and then we'll get inside the elements menu and see how the HTML look at this specific element. For example, right here we have the title for the autonomous technical autonomous vehicle trainer. We have a result info class inside of this unordered list with the class rows. And so each job title and the date and so on is inside this result row or list item, which also has the P class result info. Now inside this P class result info, we have all the information we want in the first page. Let's try first and just define a sample object with all the information that we want to scrape from this list, just so we get an overview of what we want to get. I'm going to call it scrape result, and I will have a title of the job, for example, technical autonomous vehicle trainer. And we're also going to have a description, which is a longer text when you click on the link of the job, where there's a long description about the job, the requirements and who they are and so on. It's all this text down here. And then I think we also want the, let's see what we should get. We should get the date and what's posted, could be interesting to get also. So I will make that as a JavaScript object. I mean a JavaScript date object. Then I think we could also get the URL for the job. So, you know, where you can read the full description of the job and so on, see the location, etc. And that is what you can see when you click on the URL in here. So that's on the first page. And let's also get the neighborhood that the job is inside, or the hood. And then I think it could also be interesting maybe to get the address of the job. See the address over here on the right side. And street. And I think we also want to get the compensation. Interesting data to get for all of the jobs, see which one pays the most. And of course, remember, this is just a sample, so you can see what we're actually going to get. And we're going to get this for every job on this page inside of Craigslist. Now let's try and see first if jQuery is enabled on this page. So we go inside of the console, inside of the Chrome Developer Tools, and we can see something comes up when I press the $sign, which means that jQuery is on the page. Remember that every job had this result info class inside of this P element. Well, we can see when we write result info, the selector for result info, we get 120 elements, which means we get all of the jobs on the page. So that's great. Now let's just try and go inside of the result info element. We see we have a H element, which has the link and the title of the job. So maybe if we try and get the header link class or the result title class, we can get all of the job titles. Let's try and do that. So we go through each of the result info elements. We make a each loop here, which has an index and an element, and the element is then each of the job titles. So if I write console log $sign and have my element in here, and then I can do a selector like find or children. I'm going to use children now, and I will select all the children which has the class of result title, and that's going to get me the title of every job. So here we have the result info class for every job, and then inside there's a H element which has the class of result title, and we can use that to get the job title. And now I just need to figure out where I'm missing my parentheses here. So hold on a moment. I just need to figure out where it's missing. There's a lot of parentheses, so hang in there, but we'll figure it out. Okay, yeah, I missed one at the end here, and we get all of the job titles now. So, and now we can basically just paste this code that we made inside of the Chrome console inside of our Node.js project. Let me show you how that works. We just select all of this. And then I can paste it inside of my Node.js project. Like so. And you can notice we're using the $sign that we defined using cherry load, which then gives us the opportunity to just copy paste code from the Chrome console, which is also using the $sign to select elements using jQuery. And you will see we get exactly the same output as we did inside of Chrome console. So we run the index.js file using node index.js, and we should see the exact same output as inside Chrome console. There we go. Okay, last thing I'm going to do, I think I will just make a variable called title. So I will say const title instead of having a console log, like that. So now let's try and get the URL for the job where we can read the description. You can see that inside of the H element, which has the href attribute, as you call it, which has the URL for the job. So let's make a variable for just the title, and then we can select the title and the URL. Let me show you what I mean. So I'll call it result title and put in the element itself in here. Then from the result title, I can just say .text to get the title of the job. And to get the URL of the job, I'd say attribute href. And this is exactly the same as if I was using jQuery, of course. So if you're familiar with jQuery, this should be really familiar to you. Then I think I want to put this inside of our object, like the sample object we defined before. I will just call it scrape result, and this up here I call scrape sample. And in here we put in the title and the URL. Then I will define an array where I put in all of my different scrape results, which is the different jobs. And I will just push the result onto here. And then in the end, we can also try and do a console log of our array with all the jobs to see how it looks like. Okay, let's try and run it. Node index.js. And we can see there's a pretty array coming up with lots of objects, which has a title and a URL for the job. So now we just need to add more properties to these scrape results. Now let's try and get the date time that the job was posted onto Craigslist, which is inside of this time element, the HTML time with the date time attribute. And I think we can use this date time attribute to create a new JavaScript date object. Now notice that the time is inside of result info, so we can use the same each loop that we used before and just select the time element instead of our result info, result title class. So let me just write time, and then we get the datetime attribute instead of text. Like so. And now we have the time that every job was posted. And again, we can just paste this code inside of our Node.js project, and it's going to run exactly the same as the Chrome console. So now I just added the element children with the selector inside of the Node.js project. And then I can just add the object into my scrape result, and we will have the date. I think I will also want to create this into a JavaScript object actually. Let me just add it first. I'll write new date to make it into a JavaScript object. And then we should have a JavaScript object with the date that the job was posted. Let's try and run the code with Node.js. And we can see the date posted is the date the job was posted. Okay, so that was it. Okay, so first let's try and get the neighborhood that the job is in, or the hood, which is inside of the result meta class, or the span with the result meta class. So it's not the direct children, it's actually a grandchild, I guess you would call it. So instead of using children, I would just use find to go and trace through all the children. And that means I can use find and put in result hood to get the class. And we just want the text of it, so we get the neighborhood text. Okay, like so. Now we have all the neighborhoods of the different jobs. Before we move on to the job description, let's copy paste the code or the selector we have inside of console for our neighborhood and make a variable, call it hood. Paste the selector inside here, and then add it to our result object. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to go through each of these jobs URL and get their job description. We can also get their address inside of that page and maybe their compensation. So first, let's just rename our main function from scrape Craigslist to scrape job header. Like so. And then let's make another main function, which we will call scrape Craigslist. And in here, we will make a call for the scrape job header instead. And we get the array back from it, the job array with the headers, with the title and links and so on. I'll say await, and then I want to return the scrape results array from here, which contains the title, date it was posted, and so on. And then let's make a new function in here, which we call scrape description, where we will be going through each of the jobs inside of this scrape results array and get the description for the jobs. So we pass in the array, jobs with headers. And then inside here, we need to do a little magic using promise.all to iterate through each of these jobs and make a request. Let me just show you what we will get from this function. We will get the jobs with the full data, and we pass in the jobs with headers. Now we say await first, and then promise.all. So this takes in an array of promises, and it's only going to resolve once all of the promises have resolved. And we use this jobs with headers.map to iterate over the array of jobs with headers. This is basically JavaScript ES6 that I'm showing you here, or ES7. We iterate over the jobs with headers array using map, and then we can go through each job and make a request to the jobs URL that we got earlier from the main page. And I'm also throwing in async here as well, so we can use the await keyword inside of the map function. So all of this can seem confusing if you don't know ES6 or ES7 first, but if you don't know exactly what I'm doing here, maybe brush up a bit on ES7 or ES6. But hopefully you will get the gist of how this works if you don't know ES7 already. Then let's make the chereo variable just like we did before in the job titles. Now we're just doing it for every job instead. And then let's get the posting body ID, which contains all of the job description. And now let's see how posting body.text looks like. We can see we get all of the job description here. But I don't like the QR code linked to this post so much in the top, so let's try and get rid of that. Now, since the QR code thing is inside of posting body, I think I want to remove this element first, and then we can do the .text on posting body to get the job description. Let me show you how that works. So we can use the print QR code container class to select it. And then I will just simply remove it using jQuery. And now the element has been removed, and when I use .text on posting body again, I can see that there's no longer the QR code link text up on the top. And now we can simply do the exact same thing inside of the Node.js project. We will remove the element first to not have the QR code link text in the job description, and then use the text to create our own description variable, like so. And now just let me make a property on the job object, and we have the job.description, basically the job object. And let's also take the address while we're at it. Find out where the address is, so I select the element and select the address. And we can see there's a div with a class map address, so why not try and select this. You can also use right-click copy selector inside of Chrome tools, but I don't think the selector is always so short or efficient as when you're just making it up yourself. Let's try and see how the selector looks like. You can see it's very long because it wants to make sure that we're selecting the exact element. But in this case, I think we can just use the div and the map address class. And let's try and look how the text looks for that. And that's perfect. We get the address of the job. So let's just copy that and make that as our job.address. So a brief recap, inside of the jobs with headers.map, we're returning a promise, and await promise.all is waiting for all of these promises to resolve. And again, this returns a complete array of all the jobs with their description. So we use return await, and this is going to return the job description, all the jobs with their description. Let's try and console log all of the data, see what we're getting. And it's going to take more time. We can see that there's a undefined on this array, so I'm clearly doing something wrong here. And I think I need to return also the object every time, like so. And I will try and run it again, and this time we can see an array full of objects containing the description and all of the other properties that we scraped before. Now let's try and get the compensation for each job also. So we go again and select the element, and we can see we have this just a span element without any class or ID. So, but it's inside this attribute group P class. So let's try and select the P element with the class attribute group instead, and see if we can get the compensation out from that. So I could use, for example, select the P class attribute group and then select the first child of this element. Let's try and do that. So attribute group and text. We can see there's compensation and the employment type, but we just want the compensation. So let's select the first child. So, and then we get the compensation, $23 per hour. That's exactly what we want. I think I want to clean this up a bit and maybe remove the compensation in front and just have the 23/hours instead. So let's make a variable first. Let's try it out. Compensation, and replace compensation with just an empty string. And this way our data is a bit more clean, I think. So let's do that inside of a Node.js project as well. First, let's get the raw compensation data. I think I will make this into a variable first. Paste that in. And then let's get the more clean version of the text without the compensation in front, where you use the replace to replace the compensation with a empty string, like so. And then we have the data nicely formatted on job.compensation. Let's try and see how the code looks. And we can see we have the compensation here, hourly rate, some of the OE, some of the jobs don't have compensation listed, but I think it's an interesting property to have at least. Then let's put it inside a try catch clause to catch any errors we might get. I will just output the error to console log for now, or console.error. And that's it. Now we got a good base of building a scraper, at least for Craigslist. And there's probably a lot of other sites you can use these techniques on. And let's try and see how many jobs we got. We should have 120, like there should be on the page. So you can see 120 jobs. So that's exactly the amount we need. Now you can keep building on this project. You can make it scrape other sites or pages on this as well. We are only scraping one site or one page right now. There's multiple pages, but you can also build it up so it scrapes all of the pages there is of the jobs. You can also build a REST API based on this scraper. So if you go to a REST endpoint, then bam, you get all of the data like we get in the console here. And you could present it inside of a client or just a basic HTML view. It's up to you. You could also just save all of the data to a file if that's what your client or what you want, like a CSV file, and that's up to you. Okay, so congratulations on finishing this little mini course on scraping Craigslist. I hope that you got something out of it. I'm assuming already that you know jQuery and that you know basic JavaScript. So if it went a little fast and you didn't get so much out of it, try and brush up on jQuery for selecting the HTML elements in the page, and basic JavaScript and Node.js for the code we're writing on the right side of the editor. Oh, I hope you got something out of the tutorial, and see you next time.